What would you do if a little girl appeared alone in the middle of a storm and looking at you was the only way she felt safe? Stay with me because this story will take you from fear to hope. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. The storm rolled in heavy over Seabrook Harbor, the kind of storm that made the whole town feel smaller than it already was. Wind howled through the narrow streets, rattling signs and slamming shutters against the houses lined up along the coast. Rain hammered the windshield of Jack Carter's old pickup, the wipers fighting a losing battle as he gripped the wheel tighter. Beside him, 7-year-old Noah was bundled into his hoodie, eyes drooping after a long day. Jack glanced at him with a tired smile. All he wanted was to get home, put a pot of soup on the stove, and let the night fade away. But fate had other plans. As the truck turned down the main road, Jack's eyes caught a flicker beneath a street lamp. At first it looked like trash caught in the wind, a bundle of rags tossed aside. Then it moved. Jack's chest tightened. He slowed the truck, heart thudding harder with each second until he could see the truth. It was a child, a little girl, standing alone in the storm, arms wrapped tight around herself, hair plastered against her cheeks, her dress soaked through. "Stay here, buddy," Jack said quietly to Noah, though his own voice shook. He flung the door open. Rain slapped him instantly, soaking his flannel as he sprinted toward her, crouching low. He tried to soften his voice. "Hey there, sweetheart. What are you doing out here?" The girl didn't answer, just stared at him with wide green eyes, shining with fear and tears. Thunder cracked overhead. She flinched, trembling harder. Jack didn't hesitate. "You're freezing," he whispered, more to himself than to her. Carefully, he reached out. Her tiny fingers, ice cold, slipped into his calloused hand. He pulled her close, lifting her weightless frame into his arms. She buried her face against his chest, as though she'd been waiting for someone to do just that. Back at the truck, Noah leaned forward, confusion etched across his sleepy face. "Dad, who is she?" Jack's answer was steady but heavy. "I don't know yet, but she's safe now." He set the little girl gently on the seat, turned up the heater, and wrapped her in an old sweatshirt that swallowed her small body whole. She clutched it like it was the only thing keeping her here. Jack slid back behind the wheel, his jaw clenched as he pulled onto the slick road. Rain still lashed against the glass, but his thoughts were louder. A child didn't end up alone in a storm by accident. Someone, somewhere, should have been looking for her. Until he found out who, he wasn't letting her out of his sight. In that moment, Jack Carter, tired father, small-town mechanic, knew life had shifted. He had stumbled into something bigger than himself, something that began with one act of kindness under the storm and a silent promise that he would see this lost little girl safely home. The storm had finally eased by the time Jack pulled into the gravel driveway, the old pickup rattling to a stop in front of the small cedar cabin he and Noah called home. The house sat tucked near the edge of the pines, its porch light glowing faintly through the mist, a beacon of warmth against the night. Jack scooped the little girl into his arms once more, carrying her quickly inside. The familiar scent of wood smoke and cinnamon wrapped around them as he shut the door against the rain. "Here," Noah whispered, already rushing for a towel. He pressed it into his father's hands, then darted to the cupboard and pulled down one of his old sweatshirts, faded and too big even for him now. Jack carefully slipped the shirt over the girl's soaked dress, the fabric hanging loose against her tiny frame. She shivered once, then let out the smallest sigh of relief. Jack knelt in front of her, his voice gentle. "You're safe here, sweetheart. No more rain tonight." The girl didn't answer, only glanced around the cozy room as though she wasn't sure if she was allowed to belong in it. Her hands trembled slightly as Noah appeared again, this time with 2 mugs of cocoa, his father's recipe, rich and sweet. He placed one in front of her. "It's the best," he said with a shy grin. "Dad makes it a special way." The girl hesitated, her green eyes flickering from Noah to Jack. Then slowly she lifted the mug with both hands and took a sip. Steam curled up around her face, and for the first time that night, a small smile touched her lips. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. Jack felt something stir in his chest at the sight. "Do you have a name, sweetheart?" he asked softly. Her lips parted, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Lily." Jack repeated it quietly, letting it settle between them. That's a beautiful name. Noah leaned on the table, curiosity in his eyes. Where's your house, Lily? Do you know? The little girl's gaze dropped to her lap, her fingers twisted in the oversized sleeves of Noah's sweatshirt. After a long silence, she murmured, "A car." Her small shoulders hunched, as if even that one word carried weight. Jack's jaw tightened. A car. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it sent a ripple of unease through him. Later, after tucking Lily into Noah's old bed with a blanket and leaving a nightlight glowing softly in the corner, Jack stepped onto the porch with his phone. He dialed Sheriff Morales, the only lawman Seabrook Harbor had. The sheriff's gravelly voice answered quickly, and Jack explained what had happened. The storm, the little girl, the name she had whispered. Morales promised to check the county's reports, then called back within the hour. "No missing child matches her description," the sheriff said, worry threading his tone. "Not in this county, not in the surrounding ones either." Jack frowned into the darkness. "That doesn't make sense. A kid that young doesn't just show up in the middle of a storm." "I know," Morales sighed. "But until we get more, keep her there. I'll keep looking." Jack ended the call, his thumb lingering against the screen. He turned back toward the glow of the living room window, where he could see Lily curled on the couch, Noah sitting beside her, showing her one of his comic books. The girl's head rested slightly against his son's shoulder, as though she'd known him far longer than an hour. Jack's chest tightened. Something about this didn't sit right. A little girl lost in the rain, no one looking, no one calling. It wasn't just unusual, it was wrong. And as the last drops of the storm slid from the eaves, Jack Carter felt a truth settle deep in his gut. Whatever story Lily carried, it was far from simple. And until he knew what it was, she wasn't leaving his sight. Morning light spilled harsh and cold through the tall windows of St. Mary's Medical Center, miles away from the quiet harbor town. The steady beep of machines filled the room, a rhythm that pulled Victoria Hale back from the darkness she'd been drowning in. Her eyelids fluttered open, the ceiling swimming above her, white and sterile, the scent of antiseptic sharp in her nose. Pain shot through her ribs when she tried to move, forcing a low gasp past her lips. For a moment, she couldn't place herself. Then, in a rush, the memories began to tug at the edges of her mind. The road, the rain, the screech of tires, and then nothing. "Victoria!" A calm, measured voice broke through her fog. She turned her head slowly, wincing, to see Martin Greer standing near the window, the family's longtime lawyer and her father's most trusted confidant. His gray suit was pressed sharply, his expression unreadable. Relief might have been the right response, but unease stirred instead. "You're awake," Martin said, his tone steady, almost too steady. "You've been out for days. The doctors say you suffered a concussion. You'll recover, but you need rest." Her throat felt raw as she forced the words out. "Lily? Where's Lily?" Martin's eyes flickered just for a second, almost too quick to catch. Then he smoothed his expression, stepping closer to the bed. "She's safe," he assured softly. "With her nanny. You don't need to worry." But Victoria's heart pounded harder. Not easier. She pressed a hand to her temple, forcing her fragmented memories into focus. The storm had been fierce. She remembered gripping the wheel, remembering Lily's laughter from the back seat as she tried to calm her daughter with a silly song. Then the blinding flash of headlights, the crash, metal twisting, a cry. Her breath hitched. Lily had been with her. "She wasn't with the nanny," Victoria whispered, the words breaking against her lips. "She was in the car." Martin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Victoria, concussions can distort memory. You shouldn't put yourself through unnecessary stress. The important thing is you're safe." Safe. The words scraped at her chest like glass. She could still feel the weight of Lily's small hand clutching hers, could still hear that frightened gasp right before the world went black. No injury could erase that. Her pulse quickened. The room seemed to tilt as dread clawed its way up her throat. "You're lying," she breathed, her voice sharper now, despite the weakness in her body. Martin didn't flinch, but his silence was louder than any denial. Victoria pushed herself upright, ignoring the pain slicing through her ribs. Every instinct in her screamed that something had gone terribly wrong, and the one person she trusted to tell her the truth was feeding her a script meant to calm, to control, to keep her in the dark. Her green eyes narrowed, fire sparking through the haze. Where is my daughter? For the first time, Martin's composure cracked, just a flicker, but it was enough. And as the beeping of the monitors kept time with the hammering of her heart, Victoria Hale understood the most terrifying truth of all. Lily wasn't safe. She wasn't with her nanny. She was gone. And someone, maybe even her own family, had made sure of it. While rain-washed streets of Seabrook Harbor lay quiet that morning, a mother's panic was rising miles away, sharp as the storm that had nearly taken her life. The silence in the hospital room pressed down heavier than the bandages on Victoria's ribs. Martin's polished words echoed in her mind, but they no longer had weight. She knew what she had felt, what she had heard. Lily had been with her. And if Martin was denying it, then the truth had been buried under something far more sinister. Her father's shadow had always loomed large, even in her strongest moments. Richard Hale built an empire with an iron hand, controlling everything and everyone in his orbit. He had dictated Victoria's career, her marriage, even her friendships, as if her life were a chessboard, and she no more than a piece to be moved. When she finally broke free, when she chose to raise Lily without his approval, she had known it would not go unanswered. Richard did not lose. He reclaimed. And now it was clear. He wasn't just coming for her anymore. He was coming for Lily. Victoria's breath came sharp, her pulse racing as her fragmented memories sharpened into clarity. The storm, the road, the men waiting in the distance. Her father's men. The accident hadn't been a cruel twist of fate. It had been arranged. Her blood ran cold. They had meant to separate her from Lily, to take her child back into Richard's grip. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, ignoring the pain that burned through her side. Martin had left, no doubt to report her condition, to keep her locked in place until her father decided her next move for her. But Victoria was done being a pawn. She staggered to the chair where her clothes had been folded, each motion a stab of agony, but the fire in her chest burned hotter than the pain. She had survived the crash. She would not surrender now. By the time the nurse returned, her bed was empty. The only sign she had been there was the faint imprint on the sheets and the steady rhythm of the heart monitor, still beeping as if she had never left. Outside, night had fallen over the city, lights blurring against wet pavement. Victoria slipped into the back of a cab, her coat pulled tight, her voice low as she gave her driver the destination. Not home, not the office, the only clue she had left. Her car's last GPS ping before the signal had gone dead. It led to a small coastal town called Seabrook Harbor. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the recovered data on the burner phone she had hidden from her father's watchful eyes. The timestamp was clear. The crash hadn't erased everything. Lily had been in the car until the very last recorded mile, and the trail ended in that harbor town. Victoria pressed her palm hard against her thigh, forcing her mind to steady. If Richard's men were already searching, then time was against her. He would twist every truth, bribe every official, and silence anyone who stood in his way. He would call it protection. He would call it love, but she knew better. For him, control was the only love he ever gave. Her reflection stared back at her in the cab's rain-streaked window. Eyes once trained to be sharp in boardrooms now glistened with a mother's fear. "Hold on, Lily," she whispered, her voice trembling but fierce. "I'm coming for you." And somewhere miles away, in a quiet cabin near the sea, a little girl clutched a borrowed sweatshirt and tried to believe she had finally found safety. Neither of them knew it yet, but the storm that bound them together was only just beginning. Night had settled over Seabrook Harbor, the kind of quiet that followed a storm. Streets slick, air heavy with salt, the ocean still restless against the cliffs. Inside Jack Carter's cabin, the glow of a single lamp spilled across the living room. Lily had finally drifted to sleep on the couch, curled beneath one of Noah's old blankets. Jack leaned against the doorframe, watching her small chest rise and fall, a protective ache tightening in his chest. She looked peaceful now, but the storm in his gut hadn't passed. Something about her story, or the lack of it, didn't sit right. The crunch of tires on gravel snapped him alert. Jack straightened, every nerve alive. It was late, too late for neighbors, and no one drove this far out by accident. He stepped quietly across the room, pulling the baseball bat he kept near the door. Not a gun, though part of him wished he had one, but something to remind a stranger they weren't welcome. Headlights cut across the front yard before fading as the engine died. A sleek black sedan, polished even under the thin moonlight. From it stepped a man who looked carved out of the night itself. Dark suit, black tie, hair slicked back neat. His movements were precise, controlled, the kind that screamed not of a lost traveler, but of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Jack eased the door open, stepping onto the porch, keeping his body between the stranger and the warm light of the living room where Lily slept. The man's eyes flicked toward the window, just for a second too long, before he smiled. It was polite. Too polite. "Evening," the man said smoothly. "Sorry to bother you this late. I'm looking for someone." Jack's jaw tightened, his voice calm but firm. "That so? Who exactly?" The man clasped his hands behind his back, posture straight as a boardroom executive. "A little girl," he said, his tone even. 5 years old, brown hair, green eyes, very important to her family. Jack felt the words like a blade pressing against his ribs. His pulse picked up, but his face stayed unreadable. "Can't say I've seen anyone like that," he replied, voice clipped. The man's smile didn't falter, though something in his eyes shifted, sharp and assessing. "You sure? You be doing the right thing. Her mother is worried sick." Jack crossed his arms, his frame solid in the porch light. "Then maybe she should call the sheriff. That's how folks handle things around here." The man tilted his head, amused, as if Jack had said something naive. Law enforcement doesn't always need to be involved in family matters. Jack's grip tightened around the bat, his instincts screaming. Everything about this man felt wrong. Too polished, too rehearsed, like someone who didn't care where the girl truly belonged, only that she disappeared into his car. "Well," Jack said evenly, "around here, that's exactly how it works." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant crash of waves. For a heartbeat, Jack thought the man might press harder. Instead, the stranger slipped a card from his pocket and set it carefully on the hood of Jack's truck. No name, no company, just a number printed in stark black ink. "If you see her," he said, voice smooth as oil, "call me. It'll be better for everyone." He turned, slid back into the sedan, and drove off into the dark. Jack stood there until the taillights vanished down the road. Only then did he let out the breath he'd been holding. He picked up the card, stared at the number, and felt the chill spread through him. Whoever that man was, he wasn't looking to save Lily. He was here to erase her. And Jack Carter knew one thing with absolute certainty. They'd come back. And when they did, he would be ready. Morning broke gray and unsettled over Seabrook Harbor, the storm's aftermath still clinging to the streets. Jack had barely slept, the blank card from the stranger resting heavy on the table like a threat he couldn't ignore. He was pouring coffee into a chipped mug when the crunch of tires on gravel reached his ears again. His body tensed instantly. Not another one. He set the mug down, stepped to the door, and gripped the handle. Through the glass, he saw not the sleek black sedan of the night before, but a smaller car, mud splattered from the long road. The driver's door opened, and a woman climbed out, her coat wrinkled, her hair windblown from hours behind the wheel. Her eyes, sharp, storm blue, desperate, locked on the cabin as though it held her last hope. Jack opened the door a fraction, the baseball bat still leaning by the frame, his voice steady. "Can I help you?" The woman's breath caught, her words breaking out fast, raw. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" Jack froze, his knuckles whitening on the doorframe. He had imagined this moment, but he hadn't expected her. This woman wasn't careless or detached. She looked like someone who had fought her way through fire to get here. Before he could speak, movement behind him broke the tension. "Mommy." The word was soft, fragile. Lily stood in the living room doorway, her small hand clutching the hem of Noah's sweatshirt she still wore, her green eyes widened, fixed on the woman outside. Victoria's heart nearly split at the sound. She stepped forward, tears filling her eyes. "Lily," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, it's me. It's Mommy." For a heartbeat, Jack expected the girl to run, to throw herself into her mother's arms. But Lily didn't move. She just stood there, her little fingers twisting nervously in the fabric, her gaze flickering to Jack as if waiting for permission. The silence carved deep into the air. Jack felt it like a weight in his chest. This wasn't the joyful reunion he'd pictured. This was hesitation, fear. The kind of fear a child carried when home didn't feel safe anymore. Victoria's throat worked, her lips trembling as she tried again. Lily, baby, I've been looking everywhere for you. You're safe now. You can come with me. Still, Lily's feet stayed planted. She bit her lip, her small shoulders tight, and glanced once more at Jack. And in that fleeting glance, Jack understood. She trusted him, a stranger, more than the woman who had given her life. The realization burned. He didn't know Victoria, didn't know what kind of mother she was or what kind of family she came from. But he had seen fear in Lily's eyes, and now he saw it again, shadowing every small hesitation. Jack shifted, his frame blocking the doorway a little more, his voice calm but unyielding. She's been through a lot. She's not ready to just walk out that door. Victoria's heart cracked at his words. She had dreamt of this moment, her daughter running back into her arms, clinging to her with relief. Instead, she stood powerless on the porch, watching Lily's trust belong to someone else. And beneath her grief came a cold, terrible truth. Lily wasn't only afraid of being lost. She was afraid of going back. Tears blurred Victoria's vision as she whispered, more to herself than anyone else, "What have they done to you?" Inside, Jack kept his stance firm, his instincts louder than the woman's pleas. Something about this family, about the shadows reaching for Lily, wasn't right. And until he knew the full truth, he wasn't letting her go. Victoria stood on the porch, her hands trembling, not from the chill of the morning, but from the weight of everything pressing in. Jack's frame filled the doorway, steady and immovable, his eyes fixed on her with a mixture of suspicion and resolve. Inside, Lily hovered in the living room, her small body pressed against the couch, her gaze darting between them, like she understood more than either of them wished she did. Victoria's voice cracked as she tried again. "You don't understand. If you don't let me take her now, they'll find her. My father will find her." Jack's jaw tightened. "Your father? The man in the suit last night, was he working for him?" Victoria flinched, confirming what Jack had already suspected. She drew in a shaky breath, fighting to steady her tone. "Richard Hale isn't just my father. He's powerful, ruthless. He sees Lily as his legacy, not his granddaughter. He doesn't care about her laughter, her fear, the way she clings to me at night. To him, she's an heir to mold, to control. And when I tried to take her away, when I finally said no, he sent them after us. That crash wasn't an accident. They wanted to separate us. And if he gets her back, I may never see her free again." Jack studied her, searching for cracks in her story, for signs of manipulation. But what he saw instead was raw fear layered beneath defiance. A woman used to fighting boardrooms and men twice her size, now stripped down to what mattered most. A mother desperate to save her child. He turned, glancing at Lily. She hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, but her small green eyes met his. In them he saw trust, not in her mother, not yet, but in him. And that trust, fragile and undeserved, tied his hands as surely as chains. Jack exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're saying if I let her go with you, your father's men will be waiting." Victoria nodded, her voice dropping. "They already are." Silence pressed in, broken only by the soft hum of the heater inside. Jack leaned against the doorframe, the weight of the choice heavy on his shoulders. He had his own son to protect. He wasn't looking to be anyone's hero. But he thought of Lily shivering in the rain, clutching his sweatshirt like it was the only safe thing she'd ever known. He thought of her glance this morning, hesitant but full of faith. Finally he spoke. "Then you're not taking her alone. If you want to keep her safe, we do this together. But understand something. This isn't about you or your father. It's about her. And I won't let anyone, not even you, drag her back into fear." Victoria's breath hitched, her shoulders sagging with relief she hadn't dared hope for. "Thank you," she whispered, though the words felt too small for what he'd just offered. Jack stepped aside, his gesture quiet but final. "Pack what you need. We leave before the next car pulls up this road." Victoria's eyes glistened as she stepped inside. Lily looked at her mother, then at Jack, and for the first time the child's small fingers reached out, touching both hands at once. It was a simple gesture, but it bound them tighter than any promise. As Jack closed the door behind them, a grim certainty settled in his chest. They weren't just hiding anymore. They were running. And if Richard Hale truly meant to hunt them down, then Jack Carter was ready to fight for Lily's trust, for Victoria's freedom, and for a chance at something greater than any of them had planned. The road wound deeper into the forest, gravel spitting beneath the tires as Jack guided the truck along a narrow path. Branches arched overhead, blotting out most of the fading light, the silence broken only by the hum of the engine and Lily's soft breathing from the back seat. Victoria sat rigid in the passenger side, her fingers knotted together, every turn of the road pulling her closer to a place she hadn't seen in years. At last, the cabin came into view, tucked between pines and weathered by time. To anyone else, it looked abandoned. Paint peeling, shutters half-hanging, moss crawling along the roofline. But to Victoria, it was more than wood and stone. It was the one place her father had never touched, her mother's sanctuary. Jack slowed, eyes narrowing. The front door hung slightly open, his gut tightened. He cut the engine, letting the quiet swallow them whole. "Stay here," he muttered. But Victoria was already stepping out, her boots crunching against the damp earth. She pushed the door open, calling softly into the shadows. "Mom?" The cabin bore scars of intrusion, cushions gutted, drawers ripped from their frames, papers scattered across the floor. Someone had been here, searching. Jack's hand went instinctively to the small revolver he had stashed beneath his jacket, his voice low, urgent. "They've been through this place." Victoria's heart thudded against her ribs. She turned toward the back hallway, and then, a sound, a faint creak of wood. She froze. From the shadows emerged a figure, silver hair pulled back into a braid, sharp eyes weary but clear. Evelyn Hale stepped into the light. "Mom," Victoria gasped, rushing forward, relief and anguish twisted together in her chest. Evelyn's gaze swept over her daughter, then landed on Lily, who peeked nervously from behind Jack. In that instant, Evelyn understood. Her features softened, though her voice carried steel. "They were here asking questions. They know you're running." Before Victoria could respond, the low growl of engines shattered the stillness. Headlights cut through the trees, bouncing across the walls of the cabin. Jack swore under his breath. Too late. Evelyn grabbed her daughter's arms, forcing her to look at her. "Take her. Go out the back. The old Jeep is still there. It runs, barely." "Mom, no! There's no time," Evelyn cut in, her voice fierce. "They won't leave without someone. Better it's me. I can buy you minutes you need." Jack moved fast, scooping Lily into his arms, his eyes already scanning the back door. "She's right. We can't stay." Tears stung Victoria's eyes as Evelyn pressed a set of keys into her hand. "You get her away from him," Evelyn whispered, meaning Richard, without ever saying his name. "You do what I couldn't." A pounding knock rattled the front door, followed by Dalton Pierce's voice, smooth and cold. "Open up. We know she's here." Gunfire cracked, splintering wood. Evelyn shoved her daughter toward the back, her final words sharp and unyielding. "Run!" Jack yanked the back door open, the icy night air rushing in. They bolted across the yard, slipping into the Jeep as bullets tore through the silence. Jack twisted the key. The engine coughed once, then roared to life. Gravel spat as he floored the gas, headlights carving a path into the dark mountain road. Victoria twisted in her seat, her last glimpse of the cabin lit by muzzle flashes, her mother standing tall in the doorway. Evelyn Hale had chosen her battlefield, and in that choice, given them a chance. As the Jeep barreled into the night, Victoria clutched Lily close, her heart breaking even as it hardened. The cost of freedom had been set, and there was no turning back. The Jeep rattled hard against the mountain road, every bump threatening to throw them off course. Jack's hands locked on the wheel, his knuckles white, eyes flicking from the narrow trail ahead to the mirror behind them. Headlights burned through the darkness, black SUVs closing in, relentless as wolves. Victoria clutched Lily against her chest, whispering soft reassurances even as her own pulse thundered. The child buried her face in her mother's coat, small fingers gripping tight. Jack swore under his breath. "They're not giving up." He yanked the wheel sharply to the right, plunging off the paved road onto a half-finished construction site. The Jeep bounced across gravel and dirt, kicking up clouds that swallowed their pursuers' beams. Steel beams loomed like skeletons in the dark, half-built frames groaned in the wind. Jack maneuvered fast, weaving between machinery and stacks of timber, the tires spitting dust. Behind them, one SUV clipped a pile of pipes, sending metal crashing to the ground with a screech. Another swerved wide, struggling to keep pace. "Hold on," Jack growled, jerking them back onto a service road that curved up the ridge. The mountain loomed ahead, steep and unforgiving. He pressed the accelerator until the engine roared. The SUVs followed, but farther now, their formation broken. Victoria's mind raced as fast as the Jeep's wheels. Running wasn't enough. Her father's reach stretched far beyond these roads. If they disappeared tonight, he'd still send others tomorrow. They needed leverage, and she had it. Her fingers shook as she pulled out the burner phone, the one she had sworn to use only if there was no other choice. She scrolled to the number etched into her memory, pressed call, and lifted it to her ear. The line clicked. "Victoria?" Richard Hale's voice was calm, calculated, as if he had expected this moment all along. "You've caused quite a mess." Her grip tightened. "Call them off now." A soft chuckle slid through the line. "You think you can order me? Those men are bringing my granddaughter home where she belongs. You've lost perspective." Victoria's voice cut sharply through the tremor in her chest. "No, I've gained it. Because if anything happens to Lily, every document I've gathered, every hidden account, every offshore transfer, every bribe and blood-soaked deal will go public. I made sure of it." Silence hummed, heavy and long. For the first time, Richard's voice wavered. "You wouldn't." "Try me," she snapped. "I've spent my life under your thumb, but not her, not Lily. If you want your empire to stay standing, you'll stop this hunt tonight." Jack shot her a quick glance, the corner of his mouth tight with grim approval. He gunned the engine harder, pulling them higher along the ridge as the SUVs began to falter in the rear view. Finally, Richard spoke again, his tone colder, edged with something she'd never heard from him before. Restraint. "Fine, they'll stand down. But don't fool yourself, Victoria. This isn't over." Her hand trembled as she ended the call, the night suddenly too quiet without the chase. The headlights behind them flickered, then turned away, peeling back down the mountain road. Jack exhaled hard, his grip loosening slightly on the wheel. "Looks like you hit him where it hurt." Victoria leaned back, clutching Lily closer, her voice low but steady. "For once, he's the one afraid." The Jeep crested the ridge, the first pale hint of dawn stretching across the horizon. They weren't safe yet, but for the first time since the storm, they had room to breathe. And for the first time in her life, Victoria Hale had stood toe-to-toe with Richard and won. The weeks that followed carried a quietness that felt almost foreign after the chaos. Seabrook Harbor, washed clean by storms both weather and man-made, breathed again. The waves rolled steadily against the shore, the gulls circled above, and in the heart of town, the faded sign of Carter Auto and Restoration swung gently in the sea breeze. Jack stood outside one morning, wiping grease from his hands, studying the fresh coat of paint on the shop's door. It wasn't much, but it was his, a place rebuilt not just for engines but for the life he was trying to steady. The sound of laughter drifted up the street, pulling his gaze. Victoria and Lily were walking hand in hand, the little girl skipping every few steps, curls bouncing under the sun. Lily broke away first, running the last few feet to him. She threw her arms around his waist with the easy confidence of a child who no longer questioned safety. "Guess what?" she said, eyes sparkling. Jack crouched to meet her grin. "What's that?" "I start school next week. Real school, with a backpack and everything." Her excitement spilled over, her small hands waving in the air as if she were painting the picture right there in front of him. Jack's chest warmed. "That's pretty amazing, kiddo," he said, ruffling her hair. Victoria reached them, her pace slower, her eyes softer than the first night she had stood on his porch demanding her daughter back. There was a gentleness about her now, one that seemed to grow each time she stepped into this small town. "She's been counting the days," she admitted, her voice carrying a mix of pride and wonder. Jack glanced from Lily back to her, something unspoken settling between them. They had walked through fire, through bullets and betrayals, through nights when survival was the only goal. And yet here they were, standing in front of a shop door on a quiet morning, talking about backpacks and classrooms. It felt almost like grace. "Place is looking good," Victoria said, nodding at the shop. "Not bad for a guy who used to just patch up old trucks," Jack replied with a half smile. Her lips curved. "You're still patching up old trucks." "Yeah," he admitted, but now I get paid better for it. The banter was light, but beneath it ran something deeper. Lily tugged on her mother's hand, then Jack's, as if she knew exactly what she was stitching together. The child had found safety between them, trust in both, and in her innocence she had already written the story. The adults were too cautious to name. As the three of them stepped inside the shop, sunlight poured through the wide garage doors, catching on dust motes that danced like sparks of something new. Jack watched Victoria settle into the space, Lily perched on the counter, flipping through a comic book Noah had left behind. For the first time in years, the cabin on the cliffs didn't feel like the only place that could be called home. Victoria met his eyes, holding them longer this time, her smile slow but certain. "I think we'll be staying here a while," she said, her voice steady as a promise. Jack nodded, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Good," he answered simply. In the gripping tale of Jack Carter, a humble mechanic and single dad who finds a lost girl, Lily, shivering in a storm, and Victoria Hale, her billionaire mother battling a ruthless patriarch to reclaim her daughter, we uncover a profound life lesson. A single act of compassion can ignite a chain of courage, binding strangers into a family forged in trust and resilience. Jack's impulsive decision to shelter Lily, driven by instinct rather than logic, transforms his quiet life into a daring stand against a powerful empire, as he protects a child whose fear mirrors his own son, Noah's vulnerability. Victoria's fierce determination, defying her father's control and surviving a staged crash, reveals a mother's unyielding love, proving that wealth cannot shield the heart from loss or betrayal. Together, their harrowing escape through gunfire and mountain roads, bolstered by Lily's fragile trust, teaches us that true strength lies in choosing to protect others, even at great personal risk, and that home is built not from riches, but from shared battles and unwavering presence. This story tugs at the soul, evoking tears for every moment of fear overcome by hope, urging us to act with kindness in life's darkest storms, for such moments can redefine destinies and heal broken bonds. If this narrative stirred your emotions, resonating with your own acts of unexpected bravery or connections that defied odds, share your heartfelt stories in the comments below. What moment in your life proved that compassion creates family? And don't forget to subscribe for more soul-stirring tales of love, sacrifice, and redemption. Your engagement keeps this community thriving, one inspiring chapter at a time.